Picture a woman who has spent years in solitude, longing for connection yet trapped in the confines of her own isolation. She feels as if life is passing her by, and relationships once vibrant and fulfilling now seem like distant memories. But what if I told you that her loneliness is not a permanent state, but a program her mind has been running on repeat? Today, we'll uncover how she can step into a new reality of connection, purpose, and love. Relationships are fundamental to the human experience. From the moment we are born, our interactions with others shape our identity, our perception of the world, and even the way our brain functions. These connections create a mirror through which we see ourselves. When a person engages in meaningful relationships, they are not only participating in shared experiences, but are also constructing and reinforcing their sense of self. Friendships, in particular, provide a unique space for emotional exchange, validation, and growth. They offer the opportunity to express vulnerability, receive support, and feel seen, a vital need for any human being. When friendships are absent, the absence of this relational feedback loop begins to alter how a person perceives themselves. Without these external mirrors, the mind may drift into narratives of inadequacy or unworthiness. This is not just a psychological phenomenon, but a deeply physiological one. The brain, which thrives on connection and thrives in environments of trust and safety, begins to adapt to isolation. Without the stimulus of social interaction, certain neural pathways associated with positive emotional regulation and empathy may become less active. In other words, the brain starts to restructure itself based on the environment of solitude, creating a cycle in which isolation begets further isolation. The power of relationships lies in their ability to co-regulate emotions. When you sit with a friend and share your thoughts or feelings, there's an exchange of energy that stabilizes and soothes the nervous system. This is why a kind word, a warm smile, or a supportive presence can completely shift your mood or outlook. Through these exchanges, the brain releases chemicals like oxytocin and serotonin, often referred to as feel-good hormones. These chemicals not only enhance your mood, but also strengthen your emotional resilience and capacity to deal with stress. For a woman with no friends, this lack of connection can create an emotional void. The absence of shared experiences and supportive interactions may lead her to question her value and role in the world. Without the input of friendships, her self-perception may be influenced primarily by internal dialogue, which, if negative or critical, can become a reinforcing pattern of self-doubt. This inner narrative, unchecked by the validating presence of others, might convince her that she is unworthy of connection or incapable of forming meaningful bonds. It is important to understand that the role of relationships is not just about receiving validation, it is equally about giving. Friendships are spaces where one learns to extend care, empathy, and support. In doing so, people often discover parts of themselves that remain dormant in isolation. Through the act of showing up for another, they realize their capacity for love, understanding, and kindness, qualities that are intrinsic to who they are. When these aspects are not exercised in the absence of friendships, the woman might feel disconnected not just from others, but also from her own sense of purpose and emotional depth. Relationships also provide opportunities for growth through challenge. In healthy friendships, conflicts, misunderstandings, and differences arise, requiring individuals to practice patience, communication, and compromise. These experiences refine emotional intelligence and teach lessons about boundaries, self-respect, and compassion. A woman without friends misses these opportunities for development, which can further impact her ability to navigate relationships when they do appear. It is critical to note that the lack of friendships does not signify a personal failing, but is often the result of a combination of life circumstances, past experiences, and patterns of thought. The societal pressures and expectations surrounding relationships can amplify feelings of inadequacy, making someone feel less than for not having a vibrant social circle. Yet, understanding that the brain is malleable and capable of change is an empowering realization. Even in the absence of friends, the mind can be guided toward a healthier, more connected state through conscious effort. Relationships, whether with friends, family, or even acquaintances, serve as a profound reminder of our shared humanity. They teach us that we are never truly alone, as our experiences and emotions are mirrored in others. For someone navigating a life without friendships, the journey begins with recognizing the immense value that relationships hold, not just as external experiences, but as essential to shaping a compassionate and balanced inner world. When someone experiences prolonged isolation, it has a profound impact on both the mind and the body. The brain is designed to function in social contexts where connections with others help regulate our emotions and influence our overall mental health. The loneliness, however, creates a shift in this balance, sending signals to the brain that trigger the stress response, activating the body's fight or flight mechanisms. Over time, this leads to a variety of changes in brain chemistry, altering the way the brain processes information and regulates emotions. The effects of isolation on the brain are complex, but they begin with the way the brain responds to social exclusion. Studies have shown that social pain, such as the feeling of being left out or disconnected, activates similar neural pathways as physical pain. This suggests that loneliness is not merely a mental or emotional experience, but also a physical one with real consequences for a person's well-being. The brain's response to isolation can be so intense that it literally changes the way we perceive the world. A person who feels disconnected may begin to view interactions and relationships through a lens of negativity and skepticism, expecting rejection or failure. Over time, this pessimistic outlook becomes ingrained, and the individual may withdraw even further from social opportunities, reinforcing the cycle of isolation. On a neurological level, loneliness leads to an imbalance of certain chemicals in the brain. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which are responsible for mood regulation and feelings of well-being, tend to decrease during periods of loneliness. These chemicals play a critical role in regulating emotions, and when their levels drop, feelings of sadness, anxiety, and depression are more likely to emerge. This decline in neurochemicals can make it even harder for a person to feel motivated to reach out for connection or to see a way out of their isolation. Prolonged loneliness has been shown to increase the production of cortisol, a stress hormone that, when elevated for extended periods, can impair cognitive function and memory. The constant activation of the stress response can lead to heightened feelings of fear and anxiety, making it more difficult to engage in healthy social interactions. This cycle can create a feedback loop. The brain perceives social interactions as threats, triggering the body's stress response, which in turn makes it more difficult to approach others with trust and openness. Another area affected by isolation is the prefrontal cortex, which plays a key role in decision-making, planning, and regulating emotions. When a person is socially isolated, the prefrontal cortex is less active, reducing their ability to regulate emotions and manage stress effectively. This can lead to impulsive or erratic behaviors, as well as difficulty processing and understanding the emotions of others. Furthermore, isolation can diminish empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Without regular social interaction, the brain's capacity for empathy becomes less developed, making it harder to form new connections and relate to others on a deeper emotional level. In addition to these neurological changes, isolation can also affect the brain's ability to maintain a positive sense of self. When we engage with others, we receive external feedback that helps us refine our identity. In social interactions, we learn who we are through the eyes of others, gaining insight into our strengths, values, and purpose. A lack of social connection robs a person of this reflective process, leaving them to rely solely on their internal dialogue, which may become more negative or distorted. Without the external validation that relationships provide, a person may begin to internalize feelings of inadequacy or question their worth. The long-term effects of chronic loneliness on the brain can even extend to physical health. Research has shown that isolation can lead to higher rates of inflammation, a weaker immune system, and a greater risk for cardiovascular disease. The constant activation of the stress response puts undue strain on the body, making it more vulnerable to illness and disease. These physical symptoms are often compounded by the emotional toll of loneliness, creating a vicious cycle that is difficult to break. Isolation affects the brain in a variety of ways, from altering neurotransmitter levels and reducing cognitive function to creating emotional and physical health challenges. The brain, which thrives on connection and social interaction, becomes rewired in response to loneliness. This reprogramming can make it more difficult to trust others, regulate emotions, and form new connections. However, understanding that these changes are not permanent is crucial. The brain is neuroplastic, meaning it has the ability to adapt and rewire itself over time. With conscious effort, mindfulness, and practices aimed at reconnecting with others, the brain can heal and restore its natural state of emotional balance and connection. Breaking the cycle of loneliness is not just about external circumstances, it is about consciously interrupting the negative thought patterns and behaviors that reinforce the isolation. The mind, by nature, tends to repeat patterns, especially when it comes to emotions and beliefs. When someone has been alone for a prolonged period, their mind can form a narrative based on the experience of loneliness, making it seem like a permanent part of their reality. Thoughts like, "I will always be alone," or "no one cares about me," can become deeply ingrained, shaping the way they view the world and their place in it. These thoughts, when left unchecked, begin to drive behavior. The individual may become more withdrawn, avoid social situations, or act in ways that inadvertently push people away. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Believing that connection is unattainable leads to actions that reinforce isolation. Breaking this cycle starts with recognizing that these patterns are learned and not inherent truths. The first step is awareness. The woman who feels alone may not initially realize that her loneliness is a product of her internal thought processes shaped by past experiences and emotional conditioning. Understanding this gives her the power to change the story she's telling herself. It's important to note that this process is not about denying the reality of loneliness, but about shifting the narrative from one of victimhood to one of possibility. It's a shift from believing that the circumstances dictate her emotions to realizing that she has the power to shape those emotions, regardless of external factors. One powerful way to begin breaking the cycle of loneliness is by challenging the beliefs that fuel it. If the person believes that no one will ever accept or love her, it is essential to question the validity of that belief. Are there people in her life who have shown care in some way, even if it wasn't in the form she expected? Could there be potential connections waiting to be discovered? By examining these beliefs closely, the woman can start to see that loneliness isn't an absolute, unchangeable fact, but a condition that can shift with time, effort, and a change in perspective. Another key aspect of interrupting the loneliness cycle is to create new experiences and practices that actively engage the brain in a way that supports connection. The brain thrives on novelty. Engaging in activities that are out of the ordinary, such as learning a new skill, exploring a new environment, or pursuing an interest that aligns with personal values, can re-engage neural pathways that might have been dormant due to isolation. These activities not only provide a distraction from negative thoughts, but also open the door to potential interactions with others who share similar interests. The brain, in response, begins to associate positive experiences with new opportunities for connection, and the cycle of loneliness begins to shift. Practices such as mindfulness and self-compassion can also play an instrumental role in breaking the cycle of loneliness. Mindfulness helps a person become present with their feelings without judgment. Rather than falling into the trap of believing that loneliness defines who they are, mindfulness allows the woman to observe her feelings of loneliness as temporary states, not permanent aspects of her identity. This practice fosters a sense of detachment from the emotion, enabling her to respond to loneliness with curiosity instead of resignation. She may start to notice patterns in her thinking, such as repetitive self-criticism or negative assumptions about social interactions, which can then be addressed with self-compassion. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is about treating oneself with kindness and understanding during times of emotional pain. When loneliness strikes, instead of falling into self-blame or frustration, self-compassion allows the person to acknowledge their feelings without judgment. She may remind herself that it's okay to feel lonely and that this feeling doesn't define her worth. This gentle approach toward oneself helps break the harsh cycle of isolation, which often arises from self-criticism, and fosters an environment where healing and reconnection are possible. Making small, consistent efforts to engage with others, even if in a limited way, can help disrupt the patterns of isolation. This could mean reaching out to a family member, joining a small group or community, or simply making eye contact with a stranger. These small actions can slowly build confidence and remind the individual that connection is not only possible but accessible. It is important to remember that these efforts don't need to be grand or immediately result in deep relationships. Even brief interactions or showing kindness to others can shift the brain's response to social situations, gradually breaking down the walls of isolation. The ultimate goal is not just to fill the void of loneliness with external relationships, but to create a foundation within oneself that feels whole and complete, regardless of social status or validation from others. When a woman breaks the cycle of loneliness, she not only finds the capacity to create new connections, but also reestablishes a sense of belonging with herself. In doing so, the story of isolation transforms into one of personal empowerment and growth, allowing her to embrace her worth and open herself up to the possibility of authentic, fulfilling relationships. Rewiring connection pathways is not simply a theoretical concept, it is a real actionable process that the brain is fully capable of. The brain, through its neuroplasticity, has the ability to adapt and change throughout a person's life. This means that even after years of experiencing loneliness, the neural circuits associated with connection and social interaction can be reactivated and strengthened with conscious effort. Rewiring these pathways requires intention, practice, and time, but the results can be life-changing. It starts with the recognition that the brain's current wiring is not permanent. It is shaped by habits, thoughts, and experiences, and it can be reshaped to foster more positive emotional states and social connections. The process of rewiring connection pathways begins with a change in thought patterns. Thoughts are the starting point of the brain's responses, and our brains are constantly forming new neural connections based on what we think and focus on. When someone feels disconnected or isolated, their habitual thought patterns may focus on loneliness, self-doubt, or a belief that social connection is impossible. These thoughts reinforce the isolation, making it harder to believe that things can change. However, by consciously choosing to focus on thoughts that promote connection, such as I am worthy of love and companionship, or I can form meaningful relationships, the brain begins to create new neural pathways. This process may feel unnatural at first because the old pathways are deeply ingrained, but with repeated effort, the brain will start to prioritize these new, more positive beliefs. The practice of mindfulness is a key tool in rewiring these neural circuits. Mindfulness involves bringing attention to the present moment and observing thoughts and emotions without judgment. It allows an individual to notice the negative thought patterns that might contribute to loneliness, such as assumptions that people won't accept or understand them, and gently replace those thoughts with more empowering ones. This doesn't mean denying the reality of loneliness, but simply not allowing it to define one's identity. As the person practices mindfulness regularly, they can begin to shift the emotional charge associated with isolation. Rather than seeing loneliness as a painful, permanent condition, mindfulness helps the individual view it as a temporary experience, a feeling that passes with time and attention. Through this process, the brain starts to rewire itself, creating new pathways that are more aligned with connection and acceptance. In addition to mindfulness, practices like gratitude and positive visualization can be powerful tools for rewiring connection pathways. Gratitude, for example, shifts the brain's focus from what is lacking, i.e., relationships, to what is already present and abundant in one's life. When someone who feels lonely actively engages in gratitude practices, they begin to notice the small moments of connection that occur every day, whether it's a smile from a stranger, a kind word from a colleague, or a thoughtful message from a distant friend. By acknowledging and appreciating these moments, the brain starts to form new associations, linking connection with positive experiences. Over time, this rewires the brain's response to social situations, making the person more open to new relationships and more attuned to the potential for connection. Visualization is another powerful tool in the process of rewiring. When someone envisions themselves in positive, connected social situations, their brain begins to build neural pathways as though these experiences are already happening. This visualization can include imagining engaging conversations, forming friendships, or simply being in the presence of others who are supportive and kind. By repeatedly visualizing these scenarios, the brain starts to treat them as real, altering the individual's approach to real-life interactions. The brain becomes more primed to seek out these types of experiences because it has already practiced them in the mind. This rewiring process doesn't require the person to wait for new social experiences to happen. They can begin to change their brain's response before any external change has occurred. One of the most profound ways to rewire connection pathways is through physical practices that promote connection within the body. Activities such as yoga, tai chi, or heart coherence exercises not only calm the nervous system, but also help create a sense of interconnectedness with oneself. These practices involve mindful movement, focused breathing, and body awareness, all of which promote emotional regulation and stress relief. As the body relaxes and the nervous system shifts from a state of stress to one of calm, the individual becomes more receptive to connection. These physical practices also help the individual build a sense of inner peace and security, which in turn makes it easier to reach out to others without the underlying fear of rejection. Rewiring connection pathways is about creating a shift in perception. It is a process of learning to view the self and others through a new lens, one that is grounded in the belief that connection is possible, even if it has been absent for a while. The brain responds to what we focus on, and by intentionally creating new positive patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior, the individual can start to rebuild their sense of connection with the world. It is a gradual process, but with consistency and practice, the pathways of loneliness can be replaced with new, healthier pathways that promote connection, belonging, and social engagement. The power of the brain's neuroplasticity lies in its ability to transform what once felt like an insurmountable barrier can become a source of growth, possibility, and deep human connection. The significance of relationships extends far beyond simply sharing experiences. They provide vital opportunities for personal growth and emotional development. Healthy relationships are places where individuals can test their boundaries, learn patience, and practice empathy. These experiences are often marked by moments of conflict, disagreement, or tension. While it might seem counterintuitive, it is precisely in these challenging moments that we learn the most about ourselves and others. Conflicts in relationships are not necessarily a negative aspect. Rather, they serve as valuable opportunities for personal growth and transformation. Through these challenges, individuals refine their communication skills, learn to express their needs, and perhaps most importantly, practice forgiveness. Each of these lessons contributes to emotional maturity and prepares the individual for deeper, more fulfilling connections. When a person is without close relationships, they miss out on these important opportunities for self-discovery and growth. Without the mirror of others, the chance to test one's emotional resilience or confront personal weaknesses becomes limited. For example, disagreements in friendships or intimate relationships often force individuals to confront their own insecurities, fears, or unprocessed emotions. A lack of friendships can create an emotional stagnation where the individual has fewer opportunities to process these emotions in a supportive environment. This lack of feedback can lead to a disconnect not only from others but from parts of oneself, especially when it comes to understanding how one reacts emotionally in social situations. Healthy relationships allow individuals to practice emotional regulation, a skill that is essential for personal well-being. When we are with others, we learn how to regulate our emotions through the exchange of feelings, verbal and nonverbal cues, and shared experiences. Friendships and social connections act as a form of emotional co-regulation, helping individuals to process emotions that might otherwise feel overwhelming or unmanageable. A woman who feels isolated and without friends may find that her emotional responses become more intense or harder to manage over time. Without the support of others to help her balance those emotions, she may feel overwhelmed or disconnected from her own emotional landscape. Beyond the personal level, relationships teach individuals valuable lessons in empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person, and it is something that can only be fully cultivated through close personal interactions. In friendships or intimate relationships, individuals learn to tune into the emotional states of others, to listen deeply, and to offer support in ways that are thoughtful and caring. This helps not only in strengthening the connection with the other person, but also in expanding one's own capacity for compassion and understanding. A woman without close relationships may miss out on the opportunity to deepen her own empathy, which in turn could make it more difficult for her to form meaningful connections when the opportunity arises. Healthy relationships also promote a sense of belonging, which is a fundamental human need. From an evolutionary standpoint, humans are social creatures who thrive when they feel part of a group or community. Friendships create a sense of shared identity, where individuals feel understood, supported, and valued for who they are. The sense of belonging that arises from these connections helps reduce feelings of anxiety and loneliness, providing the individual with a secure foundation from which to face life's challenges. Without this social foundation, a woman who has no friends may struggle with feelings of alienation, believing that she is disconnected from the larger human experience. This sense of isolation can become a major obstacle to her emotional well-being and personal development. Relationships offer opportunities for self-reflection and the refining of one's character. When interacting with others, we often come face to face with aspects of ourselves that we may not be fully aware of. These interactions force us to examine our behavior, our reactions, and our tendencies. For example, a disagreement with a close friend might reveal an unconscious pattern of defensiveness or an inability to listen. These moments offer valuable insights into our personality and provide us with the opportunity to grow. Without friendships, the chance for this type of self-reflection is significantly reduced, as there is no one to mirror our behavior or provide feedback on how we come across to others. This lack of interaction can make it more difficult to develop key interpersonal skills that are necessary for navigating social situations successfully. In the absence of relationships, there is a tendency to turn inward, to become more self-focused and absorbed in personal thoughts and struggles. While introspection is valuable, it can become limiting when it is not balanced by external feedback and interaction. Friendships allow us to step outside of ourselves and see the world through the eyes of another, which broadens our perspective and deepens our understanding of the human experience. A woman without friends may find herself trapped in a narrow view of the world, believing that her personal experience is the only one that matters or that no one else understands her struggles. Relationships break this cycle, offering a window into the diverse ways others think, feel, and experience the world, and in doing so, they foster personal growth and a greater sense of interconnectedness. The lack of friendships means a missed opportunity for the full spectrum of emotional development. Friendships and intimate relationships are more than just avenues for socializing, they are dynamic spaces for learning, growing, and evolving. Through these connections, individuals learn to navigate emotions, express themselves authentically, and engage with the world in meaningful ways. The absence of this relational growth limits one's ability to reach their fullest potential, both emotionally and socially. The growth that happens in the context of relationships helps individuals develop resilience, empathy, and a sense of purpose, qualities that are not just important for healthy friendships, but for a fulfilling and connected life. The journey of healing and reconnecting with oneself is often the most profound step in overcoming loneliness. When someone experiences isolation, it is easy to fall into the trap of believing that the external world is the source of their disconnection. While external relationships are important, true healing begins from within. The process of reconnecting with oneself involves rediscovering one's sense of self-worth, purpose, and inner strength. But it requires a deep commitment to understanding one's own emotional needs and learning to provide for them in a healthy, nurturing way. This journey is not about simply finding someone else to fill the void. It's about learning to find fulfillment and connection within, creating a foundation of self-love and self-respect that can attract positive relationships in the future. One of the first steps in reconnecting with oneself is to practice self-compassion. Self-compassion involves treating oneself with the same kindness, understanding, and care that one would offer to a close friend who is struggling. It requires letting go of harsh self-judgment and the critical inner voice that often arises in moments of loneliness. Instead of focusing on what is perceived to be wrong or lacking, self-compassion encourages an individual to embrace their imperfections and view their struggles as part of the shared human experience. This practice helps break the cycle of self-blame and isolation, allowing the individual to acknowledge their feelings without becoming overwhelmed by them. Self-compassion is a crucial aspect of the healing process because it fosters a sense of emotional safety. It creates an environment where the person can explore their feelings without the fear of rejection or criticism, providing a secure base for personal growth. Another essential aspect of reconnecting with oneself is the process of self-discovery. This is about taking the time to explore personal passions, interests, and values that may have been neglected during times of isolation. It requires tuning into one's own desires and listening to the inner voice that has often been drowned out by the noise of external expectations. Self-discovery allows an individual to reconnect with their authentic self, the part of them that is whole, capable, and deserving of love. When a person knows who they are and what they stand for, they are better equipped to create meaningful relationships with others because they are not seeking validation or fulfillment from external sources. They already have a strong sense of their own worth and can approach connections from a place of confidence and openness. A critical component of healing from loneliness is emotional regulation. When someone feels disconnected, their emotions can feel overwhelming or chaotic, and it may be difficult to know how to manage them effectively. Learning to regulate emotions is a skill that requires mindfulness, patience, and practice. By observing emotions without judgment and allowing them to move through without attachment, a person can start to reclaim control over their emotional state. Practices like deep breathing, meditation, or journaling can be powerful tools in helping an individual regulate their emotions. These practices create space between the emotion and the response, allowing the person to process their feelings in a healthy and productive way. Emotional regulation not only helps an individual cope with loneliness, but also fosters a greater sense of emotional resilience. It enables the person to bounce back more easily from challenging experiences and to approach future social interactions with a greater sense of calm and balance. Healing also involves addressing any limiting beliefs that have developed over time. These beliefs are often shaped by past experiences of rejection, failure, or disappointment, and they can create a mental barrier to future connection. Common beliefs such as "I'm not worthy of love" or "I will always be alone" can keep someone stuck in a cycle of isolation. These beliefs are not truths, they are the result of negative thought patterns that can be changed. The process of healing requires identifying these limiting beliefs and replacing them with more empowering and realistic thoughts. For example, instead of believing "no one will ever accept me," the person might learn to affirm, "I am worthy of love and meaningful connection." This shift in belief opens the door for healthier interactions with others and a renewed sense of possibility. By rewiring these deeply held beliefs, the individual not only heals but also becomes more capable of building lasting, supportive relationships. Another vital aspect of reconnecting with oneself is learning to cultivate inner peace. This is the ability to feel at ease and comfortable within one's own skin, regardless of external circumstances. Inner peace comes from accepting oneself fully and finding contentment in the present moment. It is not about avoiding difficult emotions or striving for perfection, but about creating a space where one can be at peace with the ups and downs of life. Cultivating inner peace can involve practices like meditation, mindfulness, or simply spending time in nature. It is about creating moments of stillness where the individual can reconnect with their inner calm and find solace within themselves. When inner peace is cultivated, it becomes easier to approach life's challenges, including loneliness, with a sense of balance and acceptance. Reconnecting with oneself often involves taking small, consistent steps towards self-care. Self-care can take many forms, from physical activities like exercise and nutrition to emotional practices like setting boundaries and engaging in creative outlets. The key is to recognize that self-care is not a luxury but a necessity. It is about making choices that nurture and honor one's well-being, even in moments of discomfort. Engaging in self-care practices helps to reinforce the belief that the individual is deserving of love, attention, and respect starting from within. These practices not only support the process of healing from loneliness, but also build a foundation of strength and resilience that can support the individual in forming meaningful connections with others. Healing from loneliness is a deeply personal and transformative process. It involves reconnecting with oneself through self-compassion, self-discovery, emotional regulation, and the release of limiting beliefs. It is about creating a sense of inner peace and stability that enables the person to approach relationships from a place of confidence and authenticity. The journey of healing is not linear, and it requires patience and dedication, but with time and effort, it can lead to a deeper sense of connection not only with others, but also with oneself. Ultimately, this process of healing is what allows a person to truly understand their worth and open themselves up to the world with a sense of possibility and hope. In conclusion, the journey of overcoming loneliness and reconnecting with others is not just about the external pursuit of relationships, but also about transforming the internal landscape. It begins with recognizing the patterns of thought and emotion that contribute to isolation and consciously working to shift them through mindfulness, self-compassion, and positive reframing. As we learn to challenge limiting beliefs and embrace practices that promote connection, we start to rewire the brain to seek out and nurture relationships that are fulfilling and authentic. At the heart of this transformation is the deep and often overlooked process of healing within oneself. Reconnecting with oneself is the foundation upon which meaningful relationships are built. It involves rediscovering one's worth, nurturing emotional well-being, and cultivating a sense of inner peace that supports interactions with others. True connection doesn't come from filling a void with others, but from finding completeness within, which then naturally attracts healthy, supportive relationships. Loneliness is not a life sentence. It is a signal that can guide us toward growth, self-discovery, and ultimately deeper connection with ourselves and others. The process may take time, and the path may not always be straightforward, but by actively choosing to transform isolation into an opportunity for inner strength and self-love, we lay the groundwork for a future filled with meaningful connections. As we heal within, we open ourselves to the possibility of creating relationships that are not just about avoiding loneliness, but about sharing our authentic selves and experiencing the beauty of human connection in its most fulfilling form.